Hi, this is Bob Hatton with some encouraging words for you today. I hope you have a good day. I hope you're well, and I wish you God's blessing on this day. We continue in Acts chapter 8 and finish it today. And I just want to have a look for a few minutes at this guy, Philip. Who was Philip? Well, Philip, we learn about him. He was chosen in Acts chapter 6 to be one of the so-called deacons, one of the 7 deacons who was to look after the widows, the ones who were being overlooked in the daily distribution of the food. And that's what he did. A persecution comes and he has to flee from Jerusalem, and he comes to this city, Sebaste, the city of Samaria. And it's there that he starts to preach, and people come to the Lord. In the midst of this revival that's going on, the Spirit of God suddenly takes him away and transports him. It's supernatural. He transports him and drops him on a very lonely road that's going from Jerusalem to Gaza. That's Jerusalem is in the south, and Gaza is in the southwest. Sebaste was in the north, quite a way in the north, way away from Jerusalem. So, and there as he's waiting on the roadside, a guy comes past in a chariot, I suppose, and he takes Philip with him. And it turns out that this man is from Africa. He's an Ethiopian, and he's been to Jerusalem. He's seeking God, he's seeking the truth, but he's come back very frustrated because he was shut out. He couldn't enter the presence of God, and he's got a book with him, and it's actually one of the books of the Old Testament. It's the book of Isaiah, the prophet. It's one of the bigger books in the Old Testament, the 66 chapters there, and he's reading through that, and he's got to chapter 53. Now, chapter 53 of Isaiah is a prophetic book. It's about the crucifixion of Jesus, and Isaiah was written hundreds of years before Jesus was even born. So Philip asks him a question. He says, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And I think in frustration, the Ethiopian says, "How can I understand it if nobody explains it to me?" Now, that's a good opening. So Philip explains to him about Isaiah chapter 53, about the suffering servant, about Jesus who was crucified, who was despised, and so on. You can read it for yourself. And this man, he decides to follow Jesus, and Philip obviously talked to him also about baptism in water, because he suddenly says, "There's water, go on the side of the road, there's water, what hinders me to be baptized?" And so he's baptized in water at the side of this dusty road between Jerusalem and Gaza, and he leaves Philip there, and Philip then goes on to a place called Caesarea on the coast in the north of Palestine. Now, what we learn from this, and what my first challenge is this morning, is that Philip, he was grounded in the Word of God, because he could answer the questions about Isaiah chapter 53. And my challenge for you is to get grounded in the Word of God. Read the Bible. Read the Bible. I notice in my experience that many people don't know what's written in the Bible, and I would encourage you to get a hold of the Word of God again and start to read it. Now, one of Philip's colleagues was a man called Stephen, who we also heard a bit about, the first Christian martyr. And the last thing that he does before he dies is that he's praying. And prayer was part of the discipline of the local church. We see the church as a whole. The apostles said we must dedicate ourselves to the ministry of the word and to prayer. We find in Acts chapter 2, 42 that the first church, that's one of the things they did. It was dedication to the doctrine of the apostles, the teaching of the apostles, and the next thing was prayer, but also fellowship and breaking bread, but also prayer. That was 2 things, and prayer is so important. The disciples said to Jesus one day, "Teach us how to pray." So 2 challenges for today is get grounded in the Word of God, and start a prayer life. Start to talk to God, even if it's just for a short time each day. Now, the next thing, what I find, is that Philip was sharing his faith wherever he went. He was sharing it with the widows, probably, we don't know exactly, but that was immediately the first thing he did when he got to Samaria. He started to share his faith, and then towards the end of the chapter, he has this meeting with this Ethiopian with whom he also shares his faith. The next thing is the thing about servanthood, and Philip, he was called to greater things. Maybe he was thought about like Stephen, called to greater things. Well, if we're called to greater things, we start off with the things that are maybe a little bit lowly. And he was satisfied with serving these widows, with giving them food every day. And that's what he did faithfully until God took him to the next step, the next level, where he became an evangelist and transformed the city of Sebast. So what have we got? We've got dedication to the Word of God. We've got prayer. We've got sharing our faith. We've got the thing about servanthood. That's 4 challenges. And I've got another one, a 5th challenge. You see, Philip was consistent in all that he did. He was consistent. He worked with the widows, and then he moved on to Samaria, and there he began to share his faith. He was an evangelist. He preached the gospel. He told people about Jesus. He saw some success. Maybe you would think it would be good. You could have spent your whole life there in such an atmosphere where so many people are coming to the Lord. But he allowed himself to be transported in the Spirit. This very strange thing that happened hundreds of miles away, and lands then there on that desert road towards Gaza, meets this guy going to back home to Africa, and shares his faith with him. He's consistent, you see. And then he leaves, and as he's going back, going on his way to Caesarea, everywhere he goes, he visits the villages, and what does he do? He shares his faith. He preaches Jesus there. He's consistent. And then he arrives into Caesarea, where he makes his home there, and we don't hear anything about him again. Well, we do, just one verse in Acts chapter 21, verse 8. 20 years go by, and Paul, the Apostle Paul, is coming through with his team, and they arrive at Caesarea. And who do they visit? They visit Philip, the evangelist, one of the 7. He's known as an evangelist because that is what he did. We see him in Samaria, we see him with the Ethiopian, we see him on the coast road going up to Caesarea, but that's how he spent his time, and he got this name, this title, if you like. He's an evangelist because that's something that he did. He shared his faith. So here we have 5 challenges for this day. I know this day is not long enough to accept these challenges, but we've got a week in front of us. We've just started a new month, and we can do this, and I hope you do it. I hope you get a hold of this, and God will bless you. Be blessed today anyway, and I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you. Bob Hatton.